So I decided one day that I was going to become one of those people, the ones who wake up early, full of energy, ready to conquer the world. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. thinking, this is it. Today I become productive. Today I will change my life. And for about 2 minutes after the alarm went off, I actually believed it. I stretched, I yawned, even looked out the window like I was auditioning for a motivational video. Then reality hit me like a cold shower. The sun wasn't even up yet. The birds hadn't started singing, and my brain immediately said, Nate, you don't belong here. Go back to bed. And that's the hook right away. The universe is reminding me that early mornings are a cruel joke. I roll out of bed anyway, trying to pretend I'm a functional human being. I stumble into the kitchen, pour some coffee. It's already too hot, too bitter, too much everything about it is wrong. And I realize in that moment that early risers make no sense. They wake up at this hour smiling, cheerful, like they're auditioning for sainthood. I'm over here negotiating with a mug of coffee like it owes me an apology. That's the hook. The absurd contrast between their energy and my zombie-level existence is comedy gold. Then comes the disaster part, because trying to be an early riser is like asking a cat to swim. I try to make breakfast, which turns into a small kitchen apocalypse. Toast burns, coffee spills, I almost fall asleep standing up. And somehow, that mess, I look around and think, yeah, this is not how humans are supposed to function before 7 a.m. And the hook works again. The more you try to be productive early, the more life conspires against you, turning a simple morning into a series of little catastrophes that feel like they're written by a sitcom writer. The conversations that happen during early mornings are the best. Someone might ask, "Don't you love mornings?" And I stare at them like they've just asked me to fight a bear with my bare hands. I nod. I mumble something vague, but inside I'm screaming, no, I don't love mornings. Mornings are a form of cruel punishment. Nate-style humor shines here because it's the universal frustration. Everyone knows someone who thrives at sunrise, and the rest of us are just trying to survive until noon. By the end of the morning, disaster is complete. I'm messy, caffeinated, but still groggy and somehow awake. I look at the early risers and think, you're amazing, and also terrifying. I'm never doing this again. And that's the closing hook admiration mixed with relief that you can go back to your normal, slightly lazy routine tomorrow, coffee in hand, embracing the fact that mornings are officially someone else's problem, not yours. I set my alarm with the absolute best intentions, the kind of intentions that make you feel like a motivational poster come to life. Told myself, today is the day. You're going to be one of those people who wake up early, smiling, productive, ready to conquer the world. For the first 30 seconds after that alarm went off, I genuinely believed it. I even sat up in bed, stretching like I was auditioning for a yoga commercial, and thought, this is going to be great. I feel amazing. But then reality hit me like a brick disguised as a rooster. The sun wasn't even up yet. My brain was still negotiating with my body, and every muscle in me was saying, Nate, this is a mistake. The hook here is immediate because anyone who's ever tried to wake up early knows exactly that internal struggle. It's like your body is staging a full-scale protest against productivity, and it's not taking prisoners. So there I was, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to reason with my own limbs. Figured I could trick myself with small wins, so I decided to stand up. Lasted about 10 steps before I nearly tripped over the carpet and realized that gravity is extra cruel at 6 a.m. The hook lands again because it's absurd. Humans are attempting to function at a time when evolution never intended them to. Tried to sip coffee while standing, a move that looked elegant in my imagination, but in reality felt like performing a delicate balancing act on a tightrope. That's when I realized early risers must have some secret mutation, some hidden superpower, because surviving these first moments of the day without chaos is completely beyond normal human capability. Then there's the internal dialogue, the relentless commentary from your own brain that makes you question every life decision. Why are you doing this? Did you even sleep enough? Is this coffee going to help or betray you? Maybe naps should be mandatory before sunrise. The comedy lies in the exaggerated seriousness of the struggle. The hook works because everyone who has attempted early rising can relate. They've had a conversation with themselves that makes them question reality, morality, and the very existence of mornings. Even getting out of the bedroom becomes a negotiation. You have to convince your body that movement is necessary despite the betrayal of every joint, muscle, and cell in your system. Every step is a minor victory. Every sip of coffee a strategic gain in the war against the early morning. The hook hits again because it's universal. The more you try to act like a human in the morning, the more ridiculous it feels. And of course, somewhere in this process, you glance out the window and see early risers jogging, smiling, radiating health and happiness, and your brain mutters, "This is black magic. There is no other explanation." By the time you finally make it to the kitchen, fully awake in body but still negotiating with your brain for sanity, the absurdity of the entire endeavor becomes painfully funny. You start to appreciate the comedy of attempting something so simple yet so impossibly difficult. The hook is in the relatability. Anyone who has faced the cruel tyranny of an alarm clock knows this struggle. This tiny war waged every morning against your own body. And it's hilarious because it's entirely inevitable. Once I managed to drag myself out of bed, the real challenge began, navigating the world while only half awake. Everything about the morning feels surreal. You've been dropped into a parallel universe where everyone else is functioning at 100%, and you're still negotiating with gravity. Your legs feel like they belong to someone else. Your eyes refuse to focus properly. The simplest tasks, like walking to the kitchen, become a comedy of errors. The hook hits immediately because anyone who's ever attempted to rise before sunrise knows exactly how absurdly difficult it is to exist at that hour. It's not just waking up, it's a full body negotiation. Treaty with yourself that may or may not survive the next 15 minutes. Then comes the coffee dilemma, which is an early riser's greatest tool and a late riser's lifeline. You try to pour it, only to realize that even this seemingly simple act requires precision and focus that your body refuses to provide. You spill a little, you curse softly, you wobble, and somehow the whole process feels like a performance, art, piece, and chaos. The subtle humor of the hook is in the contrast. Early risers make this look effortless, as if they've been born to operate at this ungodly hour, while you're over here negotiating with every ounce of your being just to survive. And of course, the coffee itself never tastes quite right. It's either too hot or not hot enough, too strong or too weak, as if the universe is mocking your attempt at being functional. Walking through the house, everything seems exaggerated. The floorboards creak too loudly, the fridge hums ominously, even the sunlight creeping through the window feels like an invasive interrogation. You're trying to exist quietly, but the world seems determined to remind you that mornings are not meant for creatures like you. The hook works again because the absurdity is universal. Night owls everywhere recognize the feeling of being out of sync with a world that expects cheerfulness and productivity before 7 a.m. Observing early risers during this process is both impressive and terrifying. They're stretching, smiling, chatting, performing what looks like an intricate ritual of human excellence. You're wobbling around like a confused raccoon forced into daylight. The comedy comes from the contrast. Their energy highlights your own struggles, creating a natural tension that is inherently funny. The hook lands because anyone watching can instantly relate to this dynamic, this mix of envy, admiration, self-deprecation that comes with witnessing someone function so well at an hour designed for suffering. The mundane tasks of the morning take on absurd proportions. Pouring cereal, putting on clothes, brushing teeth all become little battles between coordination and exhaustion. You try to multitask, thinking, I can do this. An early riser now, only to fail spectacularly in ways that feel both humiliating and hilarious. Style humor shines here because the audience sees themselves in every minor disaster, exaggerated struggle that comes with waking up too early. And through it all, the internal monologue is relentless. Why am I doing this? Should I go back to bed? Is anyone else this tired? How are these people so happy? It's a constant negotiation, a mix of panic, frustration, humor that turns the simple act of existing in the morning into an epic saga. The hook, the exaggerated absurdity of early mornings, for anyone not naturally inclined to them, keeps the audience laughing and entirely engaged in the chaos of being awake before sunrise. Once you finally reach the kitchen, the chaos truly begins. You think making breakfast is simple toast, coffee, maybe some egg, but early mornings have a way of turning the ordinary into a small disaster zone. The hook hits immediately because anyone who's attempted to function before the sun knows that the simplest tasks become nearly impossible. Toast burns in ways that feel personal. Coffee spills in slow motion, as if mocking your ambition. Somehow, every utensil in the house conspires to make you question your life choices. Style observational humor thrives here because the audience recognizes that tiny everyday disasters become infinitely funnier when your body isn't fully awake. Even pouring cereal feels like an extreme sport. You aim for the bowl, but the box is heavier than it looks. The cereal jumps like it's alive, and before you know it, a cloud of flakes is on the counter floor, and occasionally your shirt. The hook works because everyone has had at least one of these mornings where minor mistakes feel like a catastrophic failure. You try to recover, muttered under your breath, I can handle this. I am functioning. Adult. But the universe has other plans. Every drop of coffee or flake of cereal becomes a comedic symbol of your early morning suffering. Watching early risers handle the same kitchen tasks is almost cruelly entertaining. They pour their coffee gracefully. Toast is perfectly browned, and somehow they manage to eat breakfast while checking emails and journaling. The contrast is the hook. Their effortless perfection highlights your own chaos, creating a perfect comedic tension. Style humor emphasizes that this is relatable and ridiculous. There's nothing inherently wrong with you. The problem is simply the hour. Everyone watching can instantly sympathize with the struggle of attempting normal human behavior while still half asleep. As you attempt to salvage the situation, you begin to notice little absurdities that are too funny not to remark on. The toast pops up violently, like it's trying to escape. The milk is slightly too warm because you forgot to refrigerate it properly, the night before. Your coffee mug seems to have an attitude. Every small failure is exaggerated in your mind, which is exactly what makes it comedic. The hook works here because it magnifies the tension between your intentions and reality. The more you care about doing it right, the more the morning conspires against you. Even simple gestures like stirring coffee or buttering toast become exercises in patience and coordination. You realize early risers have some kind of superhuman ability to do everything smoothly while the rest of us are wobbling through life in pajamas. The audience laughs because they see themselves in every exaggerated stumble, every frustrated sigh, and every moment of mild panic. The hook is, in the end, the universality of the experience. Everyone has been there. Everyone has felt it. The comedy comes from exaggerating it just enough to be both relatable and absurd. And somehow, amidst all this small-scale destruction, you can't help but admire the people who thrive in the morning. Their energy, precision, and cheerfulness are almost supernatural, and watching them makes your own struggles feel even funnier. Style storytelling turns these minor disasters into a narrative that is equal parts self-deprecation, envy, and comedy. The hook, the mix of chaos, observation, and relatability keeps the audience hooked because it's not just about making breakfast. It's about surviving the morning while the world expects you to perform like a functioning adult. As the morning progresses, the real challenge becomes observing early risers in their natural habitat, which is both fascinating and terrifying at the same time. You watch them stretch, sip coffee, move with a rhythm that seems almost choreographed, and you can't help but compare yourself to this impossible standard. The hook lands immediately because the contrast is absurd. You're shuffling around like a confused zombie while they seem to exist on a completely different level of human functionality. Style humor thrives here, emphasizing that the sheer energy and organization of early risers is as funny as it is intimidating. Every small action they perform seems effortless, from making breakfast to checking emails and planning their day, only amplifies your own struggles. You attempt a task pouring coffee, loading the dishwasher, tying your shoes, and it somehow goes wrong in the most minor yet comical ways. The audience recognizes the exaggeration, which makes the humor both relatable and engaging. The hook is universal. Anyone who has tried to be productive early knows the mix of admiration, envy, self-deprecating laughter that comes with seeing someone thrive while you're barely functioning. Even conversations with early risers are a minefield for comedy. They ask cheerful questions like, "Don't you love mornings?" And you're forced to respond with vague positivity while internally screaming, "Oh no! Mornings are cruel. This is torture." The humor lies in the tension between social politeness and private despair. The hook is in the universality of this experience. Everyone watching has either asked or been asked this question. The awkwardness is instantly relatable. Nate-style storytelling takes these moments and amplifies them into comedic gold by focusing on the internal monologue and subtle exaggeration of reactions. There's also something subtly terrifying about the confidence early risers exude. They genuinely believe that mornings are magical, productive, and life-changing, while you're still negotiating with your pillow and questioning why sunlight exists. The hook here is in the absurdity. The world feels calibrated to reward morning people. Observing them highlights your own laziness in a humorous way. The audience can't help but laugh at the exaggeration of the early risers' perfection, simultaneously admiring them from a safe distance. Small routines that they perform flawlessly become comedy fodder for storytelling Pouring a cup of coffee, making breakfast, checking a do list is elevated into a spectacle when contrasted with your own fumbling, half-asleep attempts. Each minor failure is a punchline, each successful action of theirs is a setup, and they're smart, and the hook keeps the audience by drawing them into the shared experience of struggling to function early in the morning. By observing early risers, you start to notice the little things that make their mornings so absurdly impressive. The way they stretch without complaint, sip coffee without spilling, and handle minor crises with calm efficiency. The humor comes from your exaggerated perspective. Their excellence makes your fumbling attempts all the more ridiculous. Nate style storytelling focuses on these contrasts, turning a simple morning into a narrative of chaos, admiration, and laughter. The hook, the mix of awe, envy, hilarity keeps the audience engaged because it is both relatable and exaggerated in exactly the right way for comedy. Once you start interacting with early risers, the comedy of the morning escalates in ways that are both hilarious and relatable. They have this uncanny ability to ask questions that sound innocent, but are loaded with judgment, like, "Don't you love mornings?" And immediately, your brain starts running through all the socially acceptable answers while also silently screaming, "No, mornings are a cruel invention designed to make night owls feel inadequate." The hook lands instantly because anyone who has ever been confronted with cheerful morning enthusiasts knows that awkward tension between politeness and internal panic. Style humor thrives on this mix of social discomfort and exaggerated internal reaction, turning a small interaction into comedic gold. As the conversation continues, you notice the subtle, almost sinister confidence of early risers. They float through the morning with purpose and joy, sipping coffee, stretching, occasionally offering unsolicited tips about productivity. Each word, each gesture becomes a comedic contrast to your groggy, fumbling attempts at basic survival. The audience laughs because they recognize themselves in the struggle trying to maintain dignity while being mentally attacked by someone thriving at an hour your body is still rejecting. The hook is in the absurdity. How can someone function so cheerfully when your own existence feels like a minor disaster? Even the simplest suggestions from early risers, like, "You should try journaling in the morning," hit differently when you're still half asleep. Style storytelling turns this into an exaggerated mental debate. Should you pretend interest, not politely, scream internally about the injustice of mornings? The humor comes from the relatable panic, the contrast between calm efficiency and groggy chaos, and the way your brain dramatizes these tiny encounters. The hook works because the audience immediately connects with the universal struggle of navigating conversations with people whose natural rhythm makes you feel like a malfunctioning robot. Early risers also unintentionally highlight your own failures in hilarious ways. Watching them make breakfast gracefully, sip coffee without spilling, or stretch without collapsing makes your own clumsiness feel even more absurd. You try to emulate them for a moment, attempting a yoga pose or perfectly timed sip of coffee, only to fail spectacularly. The audience laughs because they see themselves in your attempts and failures, and the hook keeps them engaged. The tension between admiration, envy, and self-deprecation is inherently funny. Throughout all of this, internal commentary adds layers to the comedy. You analyze every gesture, overthink every word, exaggerate every minor mistake into a full-blown calamity. Nate-style humor thrives in these observations, turning ordinary interactions into a narrative that's both relatable and absurdly funny. The hook here is subtle but powerful. The more you overanalyze and dramatize the small details, the funnier the story becomes. The audience can't help but keep watching to see what disaster, awkward moment, or ridiculous observation will come next. By the time you've endured these early morning conversations, you're exhausted, caffeinated, and slightly traumatized, but also laughing at yourself and the absurdity of the situation. The early risers, blissfully unaware of the chaos they inspire, continue their routines while you navigate the morning in survival mode. Style storytelling uses these exaggerated contrasts to create a humorous narrative that's both relatable and highly engaging. The hook, the mix of awkward social interaction, envy, comedic self-reflection keeps the audience invested because everyone has faced this struggle. Seeing it dramatized makes it endlessly entertaining. By the time the morning has fully unfolded, you find yourself reflecting on the absurdity of everything you just survived. There's a moment when you pause, coffee in hand, slightly jittery, realizing that you actually made it this far without completely collapsing, spilling everything, accidentally setting something on fire. Style, humor thrives in these observations because the audience recognizes the mix of relief, minor triumph, lingering chaos that defines early mornings for night owls. The hook lands instantly because anyone who has struggled to wake up early knows the feeling of surviving a tiny war against your own body and the world around you. As you glance around, you notice the early risers still functioning with supernatural calmness. They're checking their schedules, stretching, sipping coffee, and even smiling. The contrast is striking. They appear like human superheroes while you're trying to celebrate the small victories of standing upright and not spilling cereal. The comedy comes from this exaggerated contrast, and the hook works because everyone watching has experienced the combination of awe and self-deprecating humor that comes from observing someone thrive effortlessly at a time when you feel utterly incapable. There's also a subtle moment of self-reflection, the kind that Nate's humor captures so perfectly. You start thinking about all the decisions that led you to this point, why you decided to wake up early, whether it's worth it, smart, and how your life choices could have been different if mornings weren't apparently designed as a form of punishment for night owls. The internal dialogue is relentless, dramatic, and hilarious. Maybe I'm doing mornings wrong. Maybe mornings are doing me wrong. Maybe mornings just don't care about me at all. The hook here is the universal relatability. Viewers see themselves in these thoughts and laugh at the dramatized absurdity of it all. Even minor accomplishments feel monumental. Pouring a second cup of coffee without spilling, finding your shoes, successfully tying them becomes a victory lap in the small theater of your morning. Style humor emphasizes these tiny triumphs because they are both ridiculously mundane and deeply relatable. The hook keeps the audience engaged because the exaggeration of small, everyday tasks resonates with anyone who has struggled to function before noon. It's the perfect combination of self-deprecation, comedy, and shared human experience. As the morning winds down, you start to appreciate the subtle joys of surviving early hours. The world hasn't ended. Your coffee didn't betray you, and you didn't embarrass yourself in ways that are permanently scaring. You may not be a morning person, but you made it through, and that sense of quiet victory is amplified by observing those who naturally thrive at this hour. The comedy comes from the exaggerated contrast and the audience's recognition of their own struggles mirrored in your narrative. The hook, the mix of relief, admiration, envy, and absurdity keeps viewers laughing and nodding along. fully invested in your storytelling. By the end of this chaotic, coffee-fueled journey, you're both exhausted and entertained, a little wiser about the unnatural cruelty of early mornings, but also more appreciative of the humor hidden in every mishap. Style observational storytelling ensures that the audience experiences the mix of chaos, self-reflection, comedic exaggeration that makes these mornings unforgettable. The combination of relatability, absurdity, minor triumphs creates a perfect comedic rhythm that keeps viewers engaged, laughing, and coming back for more. And in the end, after all the spilled coffee, burned toast, and internal debates about the cruelty of mornings, I realized something very important. Early risers are basically superheroes, and the rest of us are just mortals trying to survive their daylight hours. You get through it, you laugh at yourself, and maybe, just maybe, you appreciate the chaos of the morning a little bit more. Because no matter how disastrous it gets, there's something funny and strangely comforting about knowing you survived it, coffee in hand, still somehow upright, and ready to face the rest of the day eventually.